Namaskar. Well, after the agricultural reforms that benefit the small farmers and free them from limited markets and also middlemen, the government has brought in key labor reforms. Now, these restore the dignity of labor, simplify labor laws, and give labor that much needed security that they require, especially in the unorganized sector. Well, game-changing reforms, the labor reforms, that's going to be in focus tonight. You're watching Newsnight. My name is Mark Lin. Here are the headlines. Big step towards historic labor reforms in the country. 3 labor bills passed in the Lok Sabha. The Labor Minister Santosh Gangwar says that they are a game changer. He says that the laws will benefit both the organized and unorganized sector workers. Formal employment and job security will increase. The Rajya Sabha passes 7 bills in a single day. The Essential Commodities Amendment Bill 2020 is also cleared. Grains, oilseeds, edible oils, onions and potatoes will be out of the list of essential commodities. Banking Regulation Amendment Bill and Companies Amendment also passed. Forensic Science University and National Defence University related bills also passed. Anguished by the conduct of the opposition members in the Rajya Sabha, the Deputy Chairman Harivansh goes on a 24-hour fast. In a letter to the President, he says that the behavior has caused unimaginable loss to the dignity of the House. The Prime Minister hails the letter, saying that it gives new faith in our democracy. The Prime Minister also appreciates Harivanshji's initiative of serving tea to the suspended MPs in the morning. Prime Minister Modi addresses the 22nd convocation of IIT Guwahati and says that the new education policy will play an important role in building a self-reliant India. He urges IIT Guwahati to establish a Centre for Disaster Management and Risk Reduction. At a high-level meeting of the General Assembly convened on the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, Prime Minister Narendra Modi emphasizes the need for reforms in the institution, says that without comprehensive reforms, the UN faces a crisis of confidence. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to hold talks with 7 states and union territories with high rates of COVID on Wednesday. Will review measures to tackle COVID and its management. More than 63% of active COVID cases are from these states. And India's war against COVID continues. A record of over 1 lakh patients have recovered in the last 24 hours. The recovery rate is now 80.86%. The mortality rate is down to 1.59%. The Health Ministry insists on wearing masks to curb virus transmission in the light of the festive season ahead. And Britain faces a second COVID wave. The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced tougher sanctions for the next 6 months, and he said he's also warning his countrymen of more drastic measures if necessary. Our top story, the Labour Minister Santosh Gangwar told the Lok Sabha on Tuesday that the labour reforms being undertaken by the government will prove to be a milestone for the welfare of workers. While moving the bills for consideration and passage, the minister said that the government has come out with the changes in the legislations after extensive consultation with state governments and other stakeholders.
Heralding historic labour reforms in the country, the Lok Sabha on Tuesday passed 3 crucial bills related to labour reforms. The bills are the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code 2020, the Industrial Relations Code 2020, the Code on Social Security 2020. Gangwar said that the labour reforms that are being undertaken by the government will prove to be a milestone for the welfare of workers.
असंगठित क्षेत्र में काम कर रहे 40 करोड़ श्रमिकों को सामाजिक सुरक्षा देने के लिए पहली बार एक सामाजिक सुरक्षा फंड का प्रावधान किया गया है। इस फंड के द्वारा असंगठित क्षेत्र में कार्य कर रहे श्रमिक जैसे गिग वर्कर्स तथा प्लेटफॉर्म वर्कर्स के लिए सामाजिक सुरक्षा की योजना बनाई जाएगी। इससे इन 40 करोड़ श्रमिक भाई बहनों को सामाजिक सुरक्षा से संबंधित सभी प्रकार के लाभ जैसे मृत्यु बीमा, दुर्घटना बीमा, पेंशन, मातृत्व लाभ इत्यादि प्रदान किए जाएंगे। आज हम एक ऐसे ऐतिहासिक दिन के साक्षी बन रहे हैं जब देश में काम कर रहे 50 करोड़ श्रमिकों को आजादी के 73 वर्षों के बाद वेतन सुरक्षा, सामाजिक सुरक्षा, कार्यस्थल पर उचित वातावरण तथा उत्तरदायी विवाद निष्पादन व्यवस्था देने का कार्य इन लेबर कोड्स के माध्यम से किया जा रहा है। यह तभी संभव हो पा रहा है कि हमारे देश को एक जवाबदेह प्रधानमंत्री मिला है जो हर बात को सोचता और समझता है और तुरंत फैसला लेता है।
He added that these reforms will really protect the interest of workers and will provide them with social security, protection, safe working environment and effective conciliation mechanism for their grievances.
इन लेबर कोड्स में जहां एक तरफ श्रमिकों के अधिकारों को सुदृढ़ करने का प्रयास किया गया है, वहीं दूसरी तरफ उद्योगों को सरलता से चलाने के लिए एक सरल अनुपालन की व्यवस्था की गई है। अब उद्योग लगाने के लिए विभिन्न श्रम कानूनों के अंतर्गत अलग अलग कई रजिस्ट्रेशन या कई लाइसेंस लेने की आवश्यकता नहीं होगी। जहां तक संभव है अब हम सभी रजिस्ट्रेशन, लाइसेंस इत्यादि को समयबद्ध सीमा में और ऑनलाइन प्रक्रिया के अंतर्गत प्रदान करने का कार्य करने जा रहे हैं।
On the recommendation of the second, National Commission on Labour had recommended that the existing labour laws be merged into fewer labour codes, and the government started to work on these lines. As a result, 29 central labour laws are now proposed to be reduced to just 4 labour codes. All these bills were earlier introduced in the Lok Sabha in 2019, after which they were referred to the Parliament Standing Committee. Now the new bills have been introduced by the centre. The parties engaged in healthy discussion on the matter in the lower house.
ये बिल एक साल पहले आ गया तो उन अधिकारों का, उन मजदूरों का अधिकार अगर एक साल छिन गया तो उसकी जिम्मेवारी कांग्रेस है। ये 19 में बिल आया था, उन्होंने कहा था इसको और स्टडी किया जाए, स्टैंडिंग कमेटी में भेजा जाए। उनकी सिफारिश में स्टैंडिंग कमेटी में भेज दिया। स्टैंडिंग कमेटी की सारी त्रुटियां निकालकर आज बिल आया है तो बाहर भाग गए किसानों के नाम पर, जैसे किसानों को भ्रमित करने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं। आज अगर एक कांग्रेस मजदूरों की हितैषी पार्टी होती तो इस बिल के ऊपर समर्थन करके, वो नहीं चाह रहे थे बिल आज भी आ जाए और लटक जाए, और बाइकाट करके भाग गए वो कांग्रेसी लोग।
लेबर मिनिस्ट्री के द्वारा कामगारों के लिए बहुत अच्छा बिल लाए हैं। इस बिल को हम सपोर्ट भी करते हैं और सपोर्ट करना भी चाहिए, क्योंकि मजदूरों के वजह से आज देश में जितने भी बड़ी कंपनियां, जितने भी मजदूर काम कर रहे हैं, शायद उनके वजह से बड़े बड़े उद्योग आज मजबूत हो सके हैं। तो इसलिए ये ऐसे बिल लाना बहुत जरूरी है, और इनके लिए फैसिलिटीज जो ला रहे हैं, मेडिकल फैसिलिटीज हो, इनके सिक्योरिटी की फैसिलिटीज हो, इनके जो भी केस कोर्ट में चलते हैं या फिर डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल पे केस चलते हैं, उसके लिए ये केस ऐसे बिल लाना बहुत जरूरी है।
The industry chambers have also welcomed the move.
It's going to help augur the ease of doing business rankings for the country. It helps in consolidating all the different labor acts and reforms under one code, and it's going to go a long way in improving industrial relations between employer and employee.
The proposed bills are pro-workers and pro-employment. It is a win-win proposition for industry as well as for the workers. The labor bill comes as a blessing at this time. These bills will encourage more employment through the formal channels and enhance benefits for the workers.
Other stakeholders, the laborers, have also expressed satisfaction at the development.
ये आपका ये बिल जो निकला है मजदूरी के लिए,
बुलेटिन है,
ये बहुत अच्छा है। ये जो नया बिल आया है, इसे जानकर बड़ी खुशी हुई। साल में घर जाने का पूरा भत्ता मिलेगा, और जहाँ मैं नौकरी कर रहा हूँ राशन फ्री मिलेगा।
मैं अभी यहाँ पे दिल्ली में आया हूँ मजदूरी करने के लिए। मुझे पता चला है कि मजदूरों को लाभ मिलेगा, वो पेंशन मिलेगी उनको, तो इस बात की सुनकर मुझे बहुत खुशी हुई।
नई तकनीक से जुड़े ओला, उबर, एमेजॉन आदि उद्योगों से जुड़े 50 लाख मजदूरों को सामाजिक सुरक्षा और ESI का लाभ मिलेगा, अवसर मिलेगा।
These codes will also bring the industrial peace and harmony in the country, which will immensely help India in bringing much needed economic growth and help in employment generation. In these labour codes, a proper balance is maintained between the interest of workers and the employers, because then only a labour welfare can take place in a true sense. The bills will bring immense labour welfare measures to 50 crore workers in the country, both in organised and unorganised sectors. With inputs from Sudhakar Das, in New Delhi, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
And now let's go across live to a briefing which is being addressed by the Union Health Minister, Dr. Harsh Vardhan.
अभी जब हम आरोग्य मंथन 2.0 यानी जो आयुष्मान भारत की एक प्रकार से दूसरी जयंती है, ये उसकी पूर्व संध्या है। कल हम 2 वर्ष पूरे करेंगे आयुष्मान भारत की इस योजना के। तो मुझे पिछले वर्ष जब 23 सितंबर को ये कार्यक्रम दिल्ली के विज्ञान भवन में मनाया गया था और स्वयं प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी, जो कि कार्यक्रम के विचार के जन्मदाता हैं, वो स्वयं इस कार्यक्रम को आशीर्वाद देने के लिए आए थे। उस कार्यक्रम की बहुत सारी पवित्र स्मृतियां मेरे, जिसे कहते हैं कि हृदय पटल पर अंकित हैं। कार्यक्रम में जाने से पहले उन्होंने शायद विज्ञान भवन में ही बड़े ऑडिटोरियम के बाहर लगभग 1-1.5 घंटे तक देश के हर प्रांत से आए हुए उन गरीब आयुष्मान भारत के लाभार्थियों के साथ व्यक्तिगत बातचीत की थी। वो कितना बड़ा भावुक क्षण था। एक एक मरीज उसने इतने भावुकता के साथ, इतने सम्मान के साथ अपने हृदय की गहराइयों से अपनी भावनाओं की अभिव्यक्ति की थी। वो क्षण मैं भूल नहीं सकता। मुझे अभी बैठे बैठे वो क्षण भी याद आ रहे थे जब 2018 में मैं स्वयं तो साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी मिनिस्टर था, अर्थ साइंसेस का मिनिस्टर था, लेकिन कैबिनेट के अंदर जब हम लोग जाया करते थे तो हर थोड़े दिन के बाद कैबिनेट के अंदर एक व्यक्ति को बुलाया जाता था। वो व्यक्ति को मैं उस समय जानता नहीं था, लेकिन वो व्यक्ति आकर सारी कैबिनेट को ये बताया करते थे कि आयुष्मान भारत के अंदर किस प्रकार से थोड़ी करके हम प्रगति कर रहे हैं, किस प्रकार से इसके अंदर टेक्नोलॉजी का प्रयोग कर रहे हैं। मैं जानता हूं कि ये कितना बड़ा हरक्यूलियन टास्क था। इसका सपना देखना तो आसान था, इसके लिए योजना बनाना भी आसान था, लेकिन भारत जैसे 135 करोड़ के देश में इस योजना को इम्प्लीमेंट करना और इम्प्लीमेंट भी उस स्तर पर करना कि टेक्नोलॉजी के प्रयोग से देश में कहीं भी आयुष्मान भारत से रिलेटेड किसी भी गरीब के इलाज से जुड़ी हुई कोई भी प्रक्रिया चल रही हो, उस प्रक्रिया को दिल्ली में बैठकर सारे देश की प्रक्रियाओं को रियल टाइम के अंदर मॉनिटर करने का मैकेनिज्म। जिस व्यक्ति की मैं चर्चा कर रहा हूं वो और कोई नहीं, अभी हमारे वर्तमान के सीईओ डॉक्टर इंदु भूषण होते थे, जिनको कि हर महीने शायद कई बार मुझे याद है कि उनको कैबिनेट में इसके बारे में प्रेजेंटेशन देने का सौभाग्य मिला।
Well, we were listening briefly to the Minister of Health, who was talking about the Ayushman Bharat program and the success of this, which is the world's, in fact, largest health insurance program that has now completed 2 years. Now, let's come back to our bulletin, and we are going to be discussing, showing you about the key points of the labor reforms that is going to be game-changing in our country. Game-changing labor reforms in our country. We know that there is now the Industrial Relations Code 2020, which has been passed by Parliament. Also, the Code on Working Conditions Bill. I mean, there's also safety, health, working conditions. So it's a comprehensive Working Conditions Bill. There's also Social Security Code of 2020. So these three codes these bills had originally in fact been presented in 2019, but then they were sent at that time to the Parliamentary Standing Committee, and this Parliamentary Standing Committee gave about 233 recommendations, and the government has accepted about 74% of those recommendations. 74% of the recommendations were accepted. As we said, it was sent to the Parliamentary Standing Committee in 2019, these bills, and they gave them 233 recommendations of the government, and that was in fact 74% of these recommendations were accepted. So what does it do now? How is it changing the scenario? The minimum wages is now become statutory. It's a statutory right for all workers. 29 central laws have now been reduced into these labor codes, 4 labor codes. Timely guarantee to all workers. There's going to be appointment letters for every worker. There's got to be a free checkup once a year for every worker. Half the salary for 3 months after the worker leaves his job or her job, and 15 days of salary for reskilling on leaving a job. So provide you with some sort of an opportunity to reskill and get another job. This is important. Accident compensation, and also the person is entitled to the fine that the employer is that the government imposes on the employer. 50% of that fine is also to be given to the person who has an accident. Also, there's the creation of Social Security Fund for the unorganized sector, and women workers have been allowed to do all kinds of work. It's all about gender parity. They've been allowed to do all kinds of work, and of course equal pay. Now, free treatment facility in ESIC hospitals. This is on minimal contribution. It's a contributory system, but the contribution is not very much. There's also Social Security to 50 lakh workers in services, and these services include drivers of Uber, Ola, also those who deliver for Flipkart, Amazon, etc. Now, all organized and unorganized sector workers will be getting EPFO benefits. So we're going to discuss this now in Focus tonight with our guests, and in focus is this: game-changing labor reforms. Game-changing labor reforms. But before that, I'm told we're going to take a short commercial. So let's take a short commercial break, and then we'll come back. So let's bring you in focus then. In focus tonight is this: game-changing labor reforms is in focus tonight, and to discuss this, joining us by internet link, we have Dilip Chenoy is the Secretary General of FICCI, and Ashok Kumar Bhattacharya is the Editorial Director of the Business Standard. Thanks, gentlemen, for being with us. Mr. Chenoy, let's try and understand this from the point of view of industry. How would you look at it? I mean, we are saying it's a game changer, but from the point of view of the complications in law at one point, there were so many laws. Now there's a simplification of laws that have taken place, and these codes have come in. That itself, I mean, 29 laws have now been simplified into 4. That itself should help industry quite a lot, isn't it?
I think if you look at this, so 44 actually central acts have been subsumed into 4 labor codes, because these 3 which were passed today are part of the 4 which actually were recommended much earlier in 2002. The second thing from ease of doing business was that the increase in threshold limit from 100 to 300 as per the section 77, that is for retrenchment. You don't have to actually go to government for permission. The third thing which has actually happened in this is that there is a very clear definition of different types of workers, and there's a single registration. Earlier under the different acts you have to do multiple registrations. This actually allows for a single registration, and also very clearly classifies the types of companies that need to actually register and what the process that you need to follow. The next positive step is that the whole grievance redressal procedure and the roles and responsibilities of the unions and how they're going to be recognized, etc., actually come out very, very clearly.
Okay.
Right. For those segments, okay, sure.
Right, let's begin, Mr. Bhattacharya. Now, Mr. Bhattacharya, the concern was under COVID that migrant labor, had to leave because there was no security, there was that kind of an issue. But now they are covered. Instead, all migrant labor now to be covered, and not only those who are brought under by contractors, and also there's got to be a database of migrant workers, and the law will help them. It will help also in targeting, let's say, systems of response for them, skill mapping, utilization of the government schemes, etc. This is an important aspect because migrant labor at the end of the day is a huge chunk of the labor force.
Yeah, I see your point you're making, that yes, indeed, the migrant labor accounts for a large chunk of India's industrial workforce. But I think the laws actually go beyond the scope of the migrant laborers as such.
Sure, obviously, yes.
And what it does is that it allows any company which is hiring less than 50 workers the freedom to hire on terms that are mutually acceptable. So in a sense, it is in a sense that it allows the industry to cast its net wide, to hire people on terms that it can find useful. I think that's a big flexibility that has been introduced. You also have to realize that what Mr. Chennai mentioned about the relaxation in the retrenchment norms, that from 100 employees up to 300 employees, companies having 300 employees do not require the permission that is required. And I would say a significant element in this, the labor reform, is that whereas the National Labour Commission had recommended that while the threshold should be raised to 300, but at the same time, the compensation package for those who will be retrenched should also go up. But what we see in this labor code is that while the threshold has been raised to 300, meaning that a company hiring up to 300 employees need not take the notified authorities' permission before retrenching them, but the compensation package has not been enhanced as per the recommendations. So I guess this will be a matter of discussion between workers and management. And the most important thing, in my view, is the labor reform, the bills, the coverage of the gig economy workers, in a sense that a large number of workers are now part of gig economy, and they, when they come under the contract regime, then they continue to enjoy the same statutory benefits as
a regular
workers.
employee.
And finally, what I would say is this, but the law makes a clear distinction between what is a core function of a company and what is a non-core function of a company. And it actually, ordinarily, it prohibits a company to hire contractual workers for core functions. In other words, a company like Maruti Udyog Limited will not be able to hire employees on contract for its core manufacturing activities, but it can hire contract employees for its canteen facilities, for its security facilities. And
let's begin, Mr. Chenoy, once again, because Mr. Chenoy, how does this affect the demand-supply equation? Because, at the end of the day, you'll need the kind of, at least industry needs the kind of flexibility, because, in case businesses don't do too well, then, they have to be able to retrench a little bit. But at the same point in time, the fact that you're required to have skilled labor of a certain kind, and you want to choose that kind of labor and pay them as per their ability or as per their qualifications, how does this all fit in? That's how let's say a layman will look at any form of employment.
No, actually, if you look at it, while what Mr. Bhattacharya said about the contract labor, but for a large company, it will be impacted in a certain way. But then there is also this whole thing of fixed-term employment, right?
Yes, a fixed-term employee gets the same service condition, gratuity, leave, and social security as that of a regular employee. That's what it says. Yes.
That's right, and there's no restriction which in any sector it is there. So that is something very interesting. But I think what would actually happen is that for seasonal kind of industries, or where you suddenly require additional people for a particular period, companies will take recourse to the fixed term employment, and then the contract labor, will be restricted to, numbers have actually been increased from 20 to 50, right? So I think you would actually have the contract laborers limited to a certain number. But for industry, there are many other, benefits, right? So, earlier there was multiplicity of compliances, the multiplicities of registration. The cost of doing everything was there. People could actually go on flash strikes. People could use, mass casual leave to actually take it up in another manner. And I think this bill has actually, done a fine balance between, the rights and responsibilities of employers and employees, and also. It has kept in place a kind of a compounding facility for certain offences, rather than always taking the legal route. So, in terms of the other aspects about recognition of unions and all, also it provides a very clear direction. So, if you look at it on balance, unions will be happy. The employees, the migrant workers, the gig workers, the other workers also will find this useful, and industry will also find it fairly easy to comply with, and the ease of doing business and the cost of doing business will greatly be
right. But Mr. Bhattacharya, how would you look at the social security net? Because at the end of the day, an employee is looking to have some sort of protection, job security, and also a form of planning for the future, putting aside certain amount of money. Do you think that, that should be the big goal, the philosophical goal in a sense, of what is that being met?
I think you have hit the nail on the head.
Yes.
In a sense that the labor reforms that have been done through these various codes have looked at two things. One is that even when you are allowed to hire contractual employees, you cannot, under the law, cannot hire contractual employees to replace your permanent workers. That, to my mind, is a big social security assurance to the workers. That what was the fear? The fear was that if companies are allowed to go in for contractual employment, And even if for work that is additionally come forward in a seasonal industry, the new code clearly specifies that that doesn't allow the companies to replace its existing permanent employees and hire contractual employees to meet the new order. So I think there is a clear, a kind of a liberalization with some safeguards for the workers. And the second safeguard, to my mind, is by distinction of core and non-core. I think it is slightly loaded in favor of the workers, so that because the companies will not be able to fill its entire workforce with contractual employees, and it will have to have some sort of regular employees to perform.
Indeed, Mr. Chenoy, how would you look at overall? We seem to have some sort of a difficulty with your connection, Mr. Bhattacharya. We'll try and improve that. But Mr. Chenoy, the one of the other larger goals is gender parity, and to what extent do you think this is encouraging women's empowerment, greater role for women to play as employees? I mean, just saying that they can do any kind of job that a man can do, that doesn't make an employer employ them at the same level, and also to make it clear that there should be pay parity as the male counterparts. How does one actually encourage a greater role for women?
So I think, if you look at the three things which have been specifically highlighted regarding women, one was, as you mentioned, the pay parity, and the second was about allowing them to work in the other shifts. Now earlier, this permission had to be taken by from the local authority or by the state government and things like that. So it was a complete different thing in one state versus another state, etc. And the third issue was that the whole thing about relating to maternity benefits, the creche, etc., and the facilities that you need to provide. So in all these three areas, these codes actually clearly define what needs to be done. And the mere fact that there is stability and there is certainty that you can actually employ women and it's in different shifts, actually will provide for corporates to look at it very, very seriously and put it up. In fact, there are many corporates who have the stated goal of increasing the percentage of women actually working in the factories, and it is not necessarily also including manufacturing. So this is come to and then the other part is that a lot of women work in the migrant labor and in the gig economy. So if you look at the overall this thing, there are multiple things that actually encourage women and protect women workforce in these codes.
Right. I think that's all the time we have for in this discussion. Thank you very much, Mr. A.K. Bhattacharya and Mr. Dilip Chenoy, for helping us understand and throwing light on these codes and how they're going to help balance the interests of both industry as well as labor. Moving on then to our next story. India and China have agreed earnestly to implement the important consensus reached by the leaders of both the countries in a bid to stabilize the situation in eastern Ladakh. So on September 21, the Indian and Chinese senior commanders, the commandants at that level, they held the 6th round of military commander level meetings, and what happened is that the two sides had candid and in-depth exchanges of views on stabilizing the situation along the LAC in the India-China border areas and also a joint press release of the 6th round of the senior commanders meeting between India and China said that, let's see what it says. It said that both the nations have agreed to earnestly implement the important consensus reached by the leaders of the two countries. They will strengthen communication on the ground and avoid misunderstandings and misjudgments. They'll stop sending more troops to the front line, and they will refrain from unilaterally changing the situation on the ground. And refrain from unilaterally changing the situation on the ground. They will also avoid taking any actions that may complicate the situation. Now, the two sides also agreed to hold the 7th round of military commander level meeting as soon as possible and take practical measures to properly solve the problems on the ground and jointly safeguard peace and tranquility in the border area. And we have on the phone line, who are we joined by? Nandita Dagar is joining us on the phone line. Nandita, could you help us with more inputs on this, Nandita?
Yes, hi, good evening to you, Mark.
Yes.
This is a press release that has been issued by our Army, our Defense Ministry, about half an hour back. And before that, the Chinese Global Times newspaper had tweeted that the Chinese side also issued a press release. So it's interesting that this Corps Commander level meeting, which was the 6th round of military to military talks, the meeting which went on for more than 14 to 15 hours and went well past beyond midnight last night. The press release has come in just now, and both the sides are there, are actually committing in this meeting. This release, they are telling us that they have committed to de-escalation, in a sense, disengagement, and not unilaterally changing the status quo, which means the instances which the Chinese side accused the Indian side of on September 8th, they will not be repeated, of firing in the air, etc. Such misadventures can be avoided.
But they said that they're going to take practical measures, Nandita, but you know, I mean, that's a statement of intent. The practical measures for de-escalation would mean to move the troops back. You just have to de-escalate. You know, you can't just continue to build up. So what are the practical measures that they're talking about?
Yes, Mark, these practical measures have been mentioned in a flurry of diplomatic activity which we have seen in September. Our defense minister met his counterpart Wei Fenghe. Our foreign minister Mr. Jaishankar met Mr. Wang Yi in Moscow on the sidelines of SCO, and in all the meetings of the Corps Commander level talks, there has been talk of disengagement. Both the sides have committed to it. Yet the Chinese side has not adhered to it and has indulged. It has not actually practiced it has not walked the talk. So it is very difficult for India actually to implement this disengagement until and unless China implements it. Also, this Corps Commander meeting was different, Mark, in a way, because in our side, we also had a representative of our foreign ministry, Mr. Naveen Srivastav, who's actually leading the dialogue with the Chinese.
So it was both military and diplomatic at the same time?
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes, also, Mark, the Chinese side actually demanded, when the Indian side demanded the Chinese that they go back to the position of April 2020, which means status quo ante, as we call it. The Chinese side demanded that India let go of its positions on the Kailash ranges, which means the Magar Hill, Gurung Hill, all these hilltops which we had occupied on the night of 29th and 30th, which India said was a preemptive move to avoid and outflank the Chinese. The Chinese are demanding that India vacate them, but India will not vacate them in a hurry. Certainly not in a hurry, because we overlook the Pangur gap, and we have a tactical advantage over there.
Absolutely.
And until and unless the Chinese troops and Chinese PLA army walk the talk, Indian army is not going to blindly trust the Chinese in a hurry anymore.
Right, indeed. Thanks very much, Nandita, for those inputs.
Thank you, Mark. My pleasure.
Moving on then to our next story. The Rajya Sabha today passed bills, including the Essential Commodities Amendment Bill 2020. So among these other bills is a bill to declare 5 newly established Indian Institutes of Information Technology as institutes of national importance. Let's look at this report with all the details.
In one of the most productive days in its history, Rajya Sabha on Tuesday, in a matter of 3.5 hours, passed 7 key bills. The crucial Essential Commodities Amendment Bill, which removes cereals, pulses, oilseeds, edible oils, onion and potatoes from the list of essential commodities and removes stockholding limits on them, was passed by the upper house. The bill has already been approved by the lower house.
The question is that will be passed. Those in favor will please raise their hands and say aye.
This bill is part of the agriculture reforms bills that the government is pushing to raise farm incomes. The bill will also promote local to vocal concept.
भाई मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में हमारे देश के किसानों की आय दुगनी करने करना ये हमारा संकल्प है। इस संकल्प पूर्ति की दिशा में ये विधेयक मोदी सरकार का एक महत्वपूर्ण कदम है। उपसभापति महोदय, मैं आपको ये विश्वास दिलाना चाहता हूँ कि ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस की दिशा में वोकल फॉर लोकल को केंद्र बिंदु मानकर मोदी सरकार विशेष रूप से काम करने में कटिबद्ध है। ये बिल किसानों के हितों में, ये बिल ग्राहकों के हितों में भी काम करेगा, इतना मैं आश्वासन देता हूँ।
The Rajya Sabha also passed the Companies Amendment Bill 2020, which removes the penalty for certain offences.
The amendments are coming in with the singular objective of protecting the interest of the depositors. Protecting depositors by ensuring that we don't have any more such difficulties like the ones which are being faced by PMC-like problems. We want to bring in proper management. We want to make sure that they are professionally run.
The Upper House also approved a bill to declare 5 newly established Indian Institutes of Information Technology as institutions of national importance. The National Forensic Sciences University Bill 2020, the Rashtriya Raksha University Bill, the Taxation and Other Laws, Relaxation and Amendment of Certain Provisions Bill. This was introduced by the government to relax time limit on compliance with tax laws, GST payment and filing in view of the coronavirus pandemic. The amendments to the Bank Regulation Act. This is to bring cooperative banks under the supervision of the RBI in a bid to protect the interest of depositors. All the 7 bills have already been passed by the Lok Sabha and will now be sent to the President for assent. The issue of suspension of 8 members of opposition parties was also discussed. Chairman M. Venkaiah Naidu lamented that the chair has been dragged into controversy and said that democracy is for debate, discussion and decision and not disruption. On the other hand, opposition members have said that they would boycott the proceedings till the suspension of the members is revoked. With Rajesh Raj and Rishi Kumar in Delhi, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Well, Rajya Sabha Deputy Chairperson Harivansh invoked his humble origins in Bihar and socialist inspirations as he went on a 24-hour fast, citing opposition members' humiliating conduct towards him. And he announced his 24-hour fast in a letter to the President, President Ramnath Kovind, and also to the Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu, speaking at length about his anguish over the ruckus in the House during the passage of the farm bills on Sunday. But here are the details. These two visuals bear witness to the maturity of Indian democracy. Suspended Rajya Sabha MPs sitting on a dharna in the Parliament premises, and the Deputy Chairman Harivanshji offering them a cup of tea. Such scenes are quite rare in Parliament. The 8 MPs were suspended for unruly behaviour in Parliament on Sunday and were sitting on a dharna since Monday. On Tuesday morning, they were surprised when the Upper House's Deputy Chairman Harivansh Narayan Singh himself offered them tea. He arrived with tea in a bag from his home and presented it to the MPs. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, appreciating the gesture, tweeted, "For centuries, the great land of Bihar has been teaching us the values of democracy. In line with this wonderful ethos, MP from Bihar and Rajya Sabha Deputy Chairperson Shri Harivanshji's inspiring and statesman-like conduct this morning will make every democracy lover proud. To personally serve tea to those who attacked and insulted him a few days ago, as well as those sitting on dharna, shows that Shri Harivanshji has been blessed with a humble mind and a big heart. It shows his greatness. I join the people of India in congratulating Harivanshji." Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla also took to Twitter to praise the Rajya Sabha Deputy Chairman. All MPs are family members for Speaker and Deputy Speaker. They protect their rights and give equal respect to all. I express gratitude to Deputy Chairman Shri Harivanshji today for his kindness. In the Rajya Sabha as well, the Deputy Chairman's behavior was appreciated by both ruling and opposition benches.
देखिए, हरिवंश जी की मर्यादा, इतना अपमान सहने के बावजूद आज सुबह वो चाय लेकर गए थे, ये सारे धरना पर बैठे हुए जो एक्सपेल्ड एमपी उनको चाय पिलाने के लिए गए थे। भारत के लोकतंत्र में एक तरफ राज्यसभा ऐसे अपर हाउस में अमर्यादित आचरण, हिंसक आचरण, और दूसरी तरफ जो उस अपमान का भुक्तभोगी है उसका गांधीवादी आचरण, ये भी भारत के लोकतंत्र का एक बहुत बड़ा उदाहरण सामने आया है।
मैं बधाई देता हूं माननीय डिप्टी चेयरमैन साहब को कि उन्होंने एक बहुत अच्छा जेस्चर दिखाया अच्छा जेस्चर दिखाया और आखिरकार हम सब फैमिली हैं, चाहे वो चेयर हूँ या एमपीज हूँ, ये एक फैमिली है। मैं उनको बधाई देता हूँ डिप्टी चेयरमैन साहब को।
After sharing tea with the suspended members, the deputy chairman announced a 24-hour fast, expressing deep anguish over the objectionable conduct of the opposition members. He hoped that this would inculcate a sense of introspection among the members. In a letter to President Ramnath Kovind, Harivansh Narayan Singh said that what happened in the upper house on the 20th of September had caused unimaginable damage to the dignity of the house and to the chair. He wrote in the letter, "After what happened on Sunday, I have been extremely anguished, distressed, and in mental agony, and have been unable to sleep for the past 2 days. In the name of democracy, opposition members behaved in a violent manner, and there were attempts to intimidate the chair. Whatever happened in front of me on September 20 has caused unimaginable loss to the dignity of the House. The rule book was torn and thrown at me." Announcing his fast to protest against such unruly conduct, Harivanshji in his letter wrote, "This fast of mine is inspired by this feeling. Rashtrakavi Dinkar, born on the soil of Bihar, was a member of the Rajya Sabha twice. His date of birth is 23rd September. I am fasting for 24 hours from the morning of 22nd September to the morning of 23rd September. I will participate regularly and normally in the functioning of the Rajya Sabha even during the fast, so that the functioning is not affected." Prime Minister Narendra Modi appreciated Harivanshji's letter and appealed to the people of the country to read it. The Prime Minister tweeted a copy of the letter. "I read the letter written by Honorable Harivanshji to the Honorable President. Each word of the letter has given new faith to our democracy. The letter is inspiring and praiseworthy. I urge all citizens to read it." The members were suspended for the rest of the session on Monday due to unruly behavior during the passage of the agricultural bills in the upper house on Sunday. The 8 suspended members then decided to sit on an indefinite dharna in Parliament House complex in protest against the move. However, they called it off on Tuesday. With inputs from Rajesh Raj and Rishi Kumar, News Night Desk, DD India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke about the importance of education as a key component for creating a self-reliant India. He said that the NEP is for the youth of the 21st century, and the Prime Minister was addressing the 22nd Convocation of IIT Guwahati, and he also said that the Northeast is at the center of the government's Act East policy. The region is the gateway for India's relations with Southeast Asia. Here's our report.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the 22nd Convocation of IIT Guwahati through video conferencing on Tuesday. Prime Minister said that the National Education Policy 2020 is meant for the needs of the 21st century and to make India a global leader in science and technology. He said that the National Education Policy allows foreign universities to set up their offshore campuses in India, which would give global exposure to Indian students.
नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी हमारे 21वीं सदी के आप जैसे युवाओं के लिए ही है। वो युवा जो वर्ल्ड को लीड करेगा, साइंस और टेक्नोलॉजी में भारत को ग्लोबल लीडर बनाएगा। राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति को मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी बनाया गया है। सब्जेक्ट की फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी दी गई है, मल्टीपल एंट्री एंड एग्जिट के अवसर दिए गए हैं और सबसे अहम देश की नई एजुकेशन पॉलिसी एजुकेशन को टेक्नोलॉजी से जोड़ेगी, टेक्नोलॉजी को हमारे स्टूडेंट्स की थिंकिंग का इंटीग्रल पार्ट बनाएगी।
Prime Minister elaborated that all knowledge, including science, is a means to solve the problems. He urged the youth to be future ready and future fit, saying it's their dreams and aspirations which shape the future of India. He further urged IIT Guwahati to establish a center for disaster management and risk reduction so that it can provide expertise in dealing with the disasters of the region.
असम और पूर्वोत्तर देश का ऐसा रीजन है जो पॉसिबिलिटी से भरा हुआ है, लेकिन इस रीजन को फ्लड, अर्थक्वेक, लैंडस्लाइड और कई इंडस्ट्रियल डिजास्टर जैसी आपदाएं भी घेरती रहती हैं। मैं आईआईटी गुवाहाटी से भी अनुरोध करूंगा कि आप एक सेंटर फॉर डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट एंड रिस्क रिडक्शन की स्थापना भी करें। ये सेंटर इस इलाके की आपदाओं से निपटने की एक्सपर्टाइज भी प्रोवाइड करेगा और आपदाओं को अवसर में भी बदलेगा।
Prime Minister added that the Northeast region is the center of India's Act East policy and gateway to India's relation with Southeast Asia. Prime Minister said new opportunities are being created in the Northeast as the government is laying a lot of emphasis for development of infrastructure in the region, especially railways, highways, airways and waterways.
मेरा मानना है कि हम एक मॉडर्न और साइंटिफिक प्रोसेस के जरिए कल्चरल नॉलेज, स्किल्स और बिलीफ्स को रीच एंड कटिंग एज प्रोफेशनल डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम में तैयार कर सकते हैं। IIT गुवाहाटी इसमें एक मुख्य भूमिका निभाए और एक सेंटर फॉर इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम की स्थापना करें। इसके जरिए हम पूर्वोत्तर को, देश और दुनिया को ऐसा बहुत कुछ दे सकते हैं जो इनवैल्यूएबल होगा।
Prime Minister also urged the students to think about how their research can be linked to the possibilities of development of the region. With inputs from Guwahati Bureau, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed a high-level meeting to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, and in his address the Prime Minister stressed on the need for reformed multilateralism that reflects today's realities and addresses contemporary challenges. The Prime Minister also said that without these comprehensive reforms, the UN faces a crisis of confidence.
The declaration also acknowledges the need for reform of the United Nations itself. We cannot fight today's challenges with outdated structures. Without comprehensive reforms, the UN faces a crisis of confidence. For today's interconnected world, we need a reformed multilateralism that reflects today's realities, gives voice to all stakeholders, addresses contemporary challenges, and focuses on human welfare.
The government has said that 44.9 lakh patients have recovered from COVID-19 in the country, which is the highest in the world. And the Health Secretary Rajesh Bhushan also said that India contributes 17.7% share to the total COVID cases, and in terms of recoveries, India's share is 19.5% of the total recovered cases. And for the past 4 consecutive days, in fact, the number of daily recoveries has surpassed the new infections. Here's our report.
The fight against coronavirus continues as India battles the pandemic with all its resources. A record 1 lakh patients in the country have recovered in the last 24 hours. Till date, around 44,97,000 infected persons defeated the virus, due to which recovery rate has risen to 80.86%. India is ranked first in terms of recovery from coronavirus worldwide. Number of tests have also increased continuously. A total of 6.5 crore tests have been conducted in the country so far. COVID-19 death rate in India has come down to 1.60%. In the last 4 days, number of people recovering from coronavirus has also gone up. Look at this chart. United States shares 22.4% infection of the total worldwide cases, while recovery rate is 18.6%. India, the recovery rates stands at 19.5%. While Brazil has a recovery rate of 16.8%. Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has said that India's COVID-19 deaths per million population are amongst lowest in the world, which stands at 64, and the world's average stands at 123.
अगर विश्व के कुल कोविड के मामले आप देखें तो उन मामलों का 22% से कुछ अधिक यूएसए में है, 17% से कुछ अधिक भारत में है, 14% से कुछ अधिक ब्राजील में है, रशिया, साउथ अफ्रीका और फ्रांस में 3.5, 2 और 1.5% कुल कोविड केसेस जो विश्व में हैं.
There has also been a spike in number of tests in the country. On 7th July, the total number of tests with 1100 labs was 1 crore, whereas on 17th September, the number of tests with 1776 labs climbed 6 crore mark. The important development in testing is that indigenous kits are being used now.
हम इतने टेस्ट की बात करते हैं तो एक और भी खुशी की बात है कि लगभग सारे के सारे ही टेस्ट जो अब हो रहे हैं ओवरवेलमिंगली, वो सब इंडियन किट्स जो हैं हमारे ही देश में जो विकसित किए गए हैं किट्स, डायग्नोस्टिक किट्स हैं, उन्हीं को ही इस्तेमाल करके किए जा रहे हैं. और एक तरह से सोचा जाए कि जो इतनी ज़बरदस्त बढ़ोतरी हुई है ये इसलिए भी हुई है कि हम अपने ही देश में आत्मनिर्भरता बनाते हुए हमने ये टेस्ट का इजाद किया, अडेप्ट किया, नए टेस्ट भी बनाए.
In the meantime, Prime Minister Modi will participate in a high-level meeting of 7 states and union territories on Wednesday. Chief ministers and health ministers of these states will join the meet via video conferencing. The meeting will contemplate on measures and management status and preparedness to deal with COVID-19 across the 7 states and union territories with high infection rates. These states and union territories are Maharashtra, Karnataka, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh and Punjab. More than 63% of active cases of COVID-19 in the country are coming from these 7 states and union territory. Apart from this, 65.5% of the total confirmed cases and 77% of total deaths are also reported from these states and union territory. In view of the festive season in the coming days, Ministry of Health has insisted on wearing masks and stated that 36 to 50% of cases of infection can be prevented only through masks. The government has made it clear that there is no shortage of oxygen and instructions have been given to take action on hoarding and extra charges. With inputs from Nitendra Singh, News Night Desk, DD India.
And World Rhino Day is celebrated every year on the 22nd of September. It emphasizes the importance of conservation of rhinoceros species and their habitat. And also, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change celebrated World Rhino Day 2020 through virtual platforms in the presence of the Minister of State, Babul Cyprio. The senior officials of the Ministry, State Forest Departments and other organizations attended the meeting. Tapas Bhattacharya reports.
Not just India, the whole world is celebrating World Rhino Day. Your take on it and how to make it even better in days to come, sir?
We have done a good job in terms of their protection, in terms of their numbers and all of that. But you know, in wildlife, no matter how much you do, it always leaves more area for you to develop and go ahead. As I said, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude. Firstly, to all the field workers of the forest departments of the respective states for.
And in an effort to guard against fake news being circulated on various platforms, we bring you our segment on fact-checking and myth-busters. A viral post is doing the rounds on social media, claiming that the government is providing 11,000 rupees to all students of schools and colleges to help them pay their fees amid the coronavirus pandemic. The post says that the government has taken the decision after many students of the country were unable to pay their fees due to COVID-19, and the move will benefit them. But the fact check has found that no such announcement has been made by the government, and the website which has posted this is fake. And that sums up News Night for tonight. Thanks for being with us. Namaskar.